Hi, my name is Jenny Pfanenstiel. I'm a master milliner and owner of Formé Millinery, which is a hat shop located in Louisville, Kentucky. I have been making hats for 16 years. I thought I wanted to do costumes forever. I started sewing when I was 5 years old. Naturally went on to fashion design school and got a degree from the Art Institute of Colorado in Denver. And thought I was going to do costumes. I made costumes for Cirque du Soleil, for movies, commercials. I even did a Grammy dress for Margaret Cho. But I always loved hats. And I lived in Chicago during this time making costumes, and I ended up meeting a milliner who was talking about the traditional techniques of hat making, and which date back over 200 years, and just fell in love with the concept. And I ended up going to Australia and doing an apprenticeship to learn the traditional techniques. And since I knew how to hand sew, it just came natural, and that was 16 years ago.
Are you from this area?
No, my father was in the Air Force, so I moved around every couple years when I was a child. When I went to college in Colorado, I finished my schooling there, and then I moved to Chicago and lived there for 16 years. And then from Chicago, I moved to Kentucky, and I've been here since 2011, I believe it was, when I moved to Kentucky.
How did you decide that millinery is your medium?
I'd always loved hats since I was a little girl. I loved dressing up in them. I always was wearing a hat as a child, and as an adult, I used to collect vintage hats. I didn't know that millinery really was my medium. I thought I was going to be a costume designer forever because I had a passion with making costumes for the theater and the ballet. It wasn't until I met this milliner and went to a presentation that she had where she was talking about the traditional techniques. And I'm an old soul, so when I did some research and learned more about the techniques and the historical craft of millinery, a light bulb went off and I fell in love with the craft. Since I knew how to hand sew, it came naturally to me, and that's when I decided to completely change gears and start making hats.
Your very first hat, do you remember it?
I do, yes. I do. It was a braided, it was tiny, and it's made with a vintage straw braid and had vintage veiling and vintage little flowers on it. Unfortunately, I sold it, and I kick myself all the time when I think about it that I did that, because I'd love to just have it as a little keepsake. But yeah, that was my very first hat that I made.
What are you wearing today?
Well, I'm wearing one of my cloches. It's a felt cloche. It's actually part of a collection, co-branded collection that I do for Keeneland, which is a racetrack in Lexington, Kentucky. It's a beautiful historical track, and every season I do a co-branded hat collection with them. And this is from the fall-winter collection.
Do you have some of your artwork handy?
Sure, yes, I can go and grab some. Absolutely. Yeah, one moment. I'm in my hat shop right now. So we're going into spring. I'm working on that collection right now because we're gearing up for Derby. This is one of my gentleman's hats. Fedoras are really popular, especially to Derby, but you know, gentlemen like to wear hats all year round. So it's one of my straw hats for men, fedora. This is made out of wood, and it's actually made from a bourbon barrel, which is, bourbon's obviously very popular here in Kentucky, and it's made of from a very famous bourbon company called Woodford Reserve. So this is made from their bourbon barrels that we had carved into a bow tie. I'm known for my sculptural pieces, so not only do I use the traditional techniques of hat making by molding over the wooden hat forms, but I also hand sculpt material to create sculptural headpieces. For me, I love working with material in my hand and just making it move and letting it become what it wants. So here are a couple of those pieces, and I'll actually try it on for you. It's easier to see what it looks like on. So this is one of my sculptural pieces. And everything I do is one of a kind. And a lot of that reason is because I use also vintage embellishments and vintage trims. So for instance, this trim, I collect a lot of trim from the 20s and 30s from France. And so that's what some of these pieces are like. This, that's what this is here. But this is another sculptural piece that's all created by hand and me sculpting. I love France, by the way, so so I use lots of things from France. This is made of a vintage straw that is also from France. It's a really gorgeous vintage straw that's textured. It's from the 40s, and then it came flat like fabric, and then I molded it over the wooden form and then created this out of the material, and then these are vintage flowers. Yeah, I make hats for all seasons and occasions, wherever your heart desires to wear hats. So when I started making hats 16 years ago, it was not for the Derby. I lived in Chicago, and I primarily made winter hats and hats for people who went to lunch, they went to galas, fundraisers, those types of events were my primary customer at that time. Derby is just a small part of what I do.
Do you also collaborate or get inspired from British hat designers?
I don't collaborate with any British hat designers, but absolutely. I'm always fascinated with milliners in other parts of the world. I feel like it's very different from hats in the United States, but I admire milliners in other parts of the country, especially in Europe and Australia, because millinery is a respected profession in those parts of the world. You can get degrees in millinery. The traditional techniques are still very sought after and respected. I really like that those types of traditions are still, people are still very passionate about it, because here in the United States, I feel like it's all quick, easy, how quickly can you mass produce something? Lots of things are made of China here, and I even get approached from Chinese manufacturers about having my hats mass produced, and that's just not something I'm interested in. I love the traditional techniques and helping keep this craft alive here in the United States. And that's one of the things that I love most about hat making, is not just the finishing part, but the actual construction of a hat. And more importantly, the hat blocks that I use, many of them are hundreds of years old. And for me, thinking about when I'm making a hat on these hat blocks, thinking about how many people have made a hat prior to me on this particular block, and what did they make it for, and who did they make it for, and what parts of the world has this particular hat block traveled. So for me, it's almost like the energy of these other people that have made hats on these hat blocks come through the making of each of my hats. And that's something you just can't duplicate with modern technology. So for me, it's more than just making a hat. It's the energy, the passion, the craft, the traditional techniques.
Let's talk about the palette.
I would say there's a lot more color in the South, especially during Derby, of course, because it's springtime. But yes, you certainly see a lot more color. I would say too that hats are a little bit more flamboyant, expressive, bigger. Big brims are very popular here, and that might be because of, it's warmer, the sun is out more, and so people are using bigger brims for sun coverage. But yeah, I feel like people are a little more expressive with their hats in the South than they are in the North.
You collaborate with Swarovski?
I do, yes. I have one of the highest levels of brand collaboration with Swarovski crystals, and last year was my first year working with them and did a collaboration of beautiful sculpted hats with their crystals, and we ended up auctioning off one of them that raised $3,200 for a local charity, which we were very excited about. And this is the 150th Kentucky Derby this coming May, and so I'll be working with Swarovski on some other one-of-a-kind pieces that we'll be selling, as well as I am having a 150, the little rose, and it actually looks like this. I'm having the 150 with the rose made from Swarovski crystals that's going to go on each of my hats that I make for the Derby as a little keepsake of the Kentucky Derby 150.
How do you feel that the public's attitude towards hats evolved over the years?
Here in the United States, you know, that's really what I can speak on. It certainly has changed over the years. I blame it on the 60s and big hair. The bigger the hair, you know, they didn't want to put a hat over it. Yeah, I think it's just life and trends, and, you know, but fashion, I believe, comes back around, and, you know, certain trends come back around. The United States is certainly a lot more casual country than other parts of the world. We used to wear hats and gloves every time we left the house, but today you don't see that. Usually those types of things are worn to church or weddings. It amazes me, you know, when I see someone wearing jeans to a funeral, you know, things like that. So, you know, unfortunately, we have become more of a casual environment. However, that's one of the reasons too I like the Derby, is because it's giving everybody a reason to dress up, get out of their comfort zone. If they're not used to wearing a hat, they partake in the festivities, which include wearing a hat. But it's, you know, they take time to dress up and really be a part of the culture of the Derby. I do think that hats in general are becoming more popular. Seeing celebrities and movie stars walking the red carpet or wearing hats to different functions here in the United States, it shows our general public that hats can be looked at as just any other kind of accessory, and really is the cherry on top to your outfit. So I think it's slowly coming back with the younger generations. Will it ever be like it used to? Probably not. I see new people learning how to make hats every day, so that's great. The more people who make hats, the more people will wear them.
How do you research your hats?
My inspiration, because well, like I had mentioned earlier, I'm an old soul, so I love vintage things. I love cloches, are probably one of my favorite styles. If you could see my shop, I'm just surrounded by things that bring me joy, that through collections of travel, but things like plants, cobblestone roads, architecture. Believe it or not, those are the types of things that bring inspiration to me. I don't always follow trends. I might for color, but otherwise I just let the material that I'm drawn to speak to me and become what it wants. Plant life, little details of crystals, those types of things is what inspire me.
When you decided to do fashion design, what did you envision?
When I decided to do fashion design, I originally went into fashion design because I used to be a ballerina when I was a child, and I loved the ballet. And I thought, you know, if I'm not going to be a professional ballerina, I'll make costumes for them. And so that's initially why I went into fashion design, is to make costumes for the ballet, which I did in Colorado. And I did also in Chicago with the Joffrey Ballet. And, and then it just evolved from there into commercials and movies and, other costume opportunities.
What events do you have right now at the museum?
Since we're kind of getting in full swing of the Derby, I do a lot of hat experiences. Not only do I sell and make custom hats, and here at my hat shop, people can come in and buy a hat off the rack if they're visiting town, but I also do hat experiences where people can come here to the shop. They can do a tour of my hat shop. I do a demonstration on how I sculpt hats on my braid machine from the 1800s. And then I also do like speed hat workshops and hat experiences. Companies that come to town for Derby or just for a convention in town and they're looking for something to do. A lot of times people will go to Churchill Downs, the racetrack, or they'll do a bourbon tour, but then I provide a hat experience where I'll create a hat base ahead of time and then they will finish the hat. So it'll usually be for a couple of hours and I bring feathers and flowers and ribbons and then I'll show them how to manipulate those things to then finish a hat in the way that they like. And then they get to leave Kentucky with, a momentum of their time here. So I have quite a few of those coming up actually. There's also a fashion show at the Kentucky Derby Museum I'm participating in, another fashion show at the Botanical Gardens coming up. There's lots going on.
When you decide to make a hat and you get a commission, what kind of questions do you ask?
I typically ask quite a bit of questions. I feel learning about the person, their personality, the things that they enjoy doing, all plays a part in how I finish the hat. Obviously I use my hat blocks over and over as a base and starting point when I'm creating a hat. But let's say for instance with this, if I met with two different customers that wanted a shape like this, one of them though told me that they're really reserved, they like to blend in, something more classic and refined. I might create something like similar to this, I finish it like this. But then if I speak to a customer and they say, I'm the life of the party, I want to stand out, I want to be photographed, I'm flamboyant, then I would finish this style very differently. Maybe there'd be more feathers flowing or flowers, and maybe it'd be a brighter color. So the way that I finish a piece really plays a part in who the person is and their personality. So yes, all of those things I take into account of how I finish a hat, but also their physique, their face shape, their hair length. When I'm suggesting a particular style, if someone comes to me and they're not used to wearing hats and they don't know where to start, and I'm suggesting a particular style, all of that plays a part as well. For someone who's a little shorter like myself, having a really large brim doesn't always work well because I feel like a mushroom and hidden. Something with a little flip of a brim tends to be a little bit better to show off your face. If you have really short hair, you don't want that to hide. So having your hat with a little flip to show your cute hairstyle, I usually would suggest. So yes, all of that plays a part in hats that I would suggest or recommend for each client.
Do you collaborate with schools or other establishments?
Yes, so I create collections for a company called Vineyard Vines, which is a pretty large company. I do roughly 800 fascinators for them every year. I also do a collaboration with Keeneland, where I had mentioned earlier, I do usually a spring collection with them as well as a fall collection. This year I'm also working with Old Forester, which is another bourbon company, where I'll be creating men's and women's hats for their customers. J. Peterman is another customer that I collaborate with. They're an online catalog that I create spring and fall collections with as well to coordinate with their outfits. I'm always expanding, trying to expand my brand and working with different clients to create lovely hats for them.
And you are a Tory Burch Fellow.
Yes. So Tory Burch, she started the Tory Burch Foundation to empower women entrepreneurs and to help them grow their business. So in 2019, I was one of 50 women chosen as a woman entrepreneur that she chose to support, and it was amazing. It's truly honored to be recognized for my craft. I was invited out to New York to her headquarters, and she had a group of people that she works with, marketing professionals, branding professionals, financial professionals that she works with, that we all were able to learn from and figure out other ways that we can grow our business to become successful. So that's how, Tory Burch started from nothing. And so it's very inspiring to see where she has come from as a woman entrepreneur herself. So,
do you collaborate with other milliners from, let's say, the north of the country?
I usually don't collaborate with other milliners, but what I do support is I have 2 other locations besides here. Here, this is Formé Millinery. I specialize in the couture handmade custom hats here. We have another location called Judith M. Millinery Supply House, where we provide raw materials to people like myself, or to Disney or Warner Brothers, universities, to their costume departments to make hats for whatever projects they're working on. And then we recently opened up a 3rd location called the Hat Shop, which caters to hat designers and decorators. So we provide materials as well as hat bases, so pre-made things for people who are more DIY but don't make the hats from scratch. The way that I collaborate with other hat artists is it's giving them a platform to showcase their wares. So we do support milliners and bring them in for trunk shows. We sell their hats there. And, because I remember when I was starting out, before I had a store, how do I get my name out there? How do I let people know about my hats and buy them and try them on? And so it took other stores to believe in me and my hats to sell my wares. So, for my husband and I, we wanted to support the local and national millinery community by giving them a store and a platform to showcase their wares as well, but also be able to provide and shop for local materials too.
You said that you get some of your materials from France. How do you find them?
I have found a really great source. Believe it or not, I found them on Etsy, but I have bought so much stuff from them that I've actually had private conversations with them to find out more about where these amazing materials have come from. Their mother, who has now passed, she bought a trim company that was going out of business in France, and thousands and thousands of these vintage trims that she gave a new home to. And she didn't have a store. She just loved these handmade trims that she didn't want to see go to waste or collect mold in some basement somewhere. She purchased all this stock of this store that was closing down. Apparently she traveled to France a lot. So her children are selling off those pieces now. But I search high and low. I've been to France, and going to estate sales or flea markets or into just random stores. I'm always keeping my eye out for things that catch my eye.
Is there a historical time that you feel closer to in terms of hats?
Well, I would say I'm drawn, because the cloche is one of my favorite styles. I would say the 20s and 40s are probably what I'm mostly drawn to.
If you have to choose a personality to wear your hat, it doesn't have to be contemporary. Who would it be?
I'm inspired by Lily Deshay. She's a French milliner from back in the day, from the late 1800s, but was very popular during the 20s. It would be awesome to have her adorn one of my hats. And, for someone who was alive and had a career when millinery was in its prime time, I'd love for her to adorn one of my hats and just talk to her about what she thinks of millinery today. So.
Millinery is very meticulous. It puts a bit of, strain on your eyes.
Yes, and your hands. My husband says I have the strongest fingers he's ever seen. I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but yes, my eyesight has certainly taken a toll over the years, and having to wear readers or use a magnifying glass, because I do lots of hand stitching, and so it's all kind of blending in together now. So yes, because of that, I have to take measures. Luckily, there are measures to be taken to help with that. But I also notice too, when I'm hand sewing, my fingers will lock up and get really tight and sore. I mean, I couldn't imagine what would happen if I lost the use of my hands. Just have to try to keep taking care of myself the best I can so I can make hats for as long as I can. At Formé Millinery, it's just me. It's just Formé Millinery. At our other location, the hat shop, we do support other milliners and hat designers and give them a platform to share their creations and sell them.
How do you see hat design in the future?
I think that hats are still on a comeback. I think that they're still becoming more popular, making a return, I would say, maybe in a little bit different way than back in the day. But I think people are seeing hats as an accessory, that it really complements and completes an outfit. I always try to explain to people that there's, like in the winter time, there's no reason why you can't be warm and fashionable. You don't have to wear that stocking cap or earmuffs that, are unflattering. You can wear something like this that's still warm, keeps you comfortable, covers your ears. So I think it's just, education, and the more people that see people wearing hats out and about for all occasions and all seasons, people will catch on. And so I think it's definitely not a lost art here in the U.S. It takes time because we've certainly become a lot more casual, but I think it's by no means a forgotten craft here.
Do you attend events regularly at Kentucky Derby?
Yes, I attend a lot of events, and of course I always am wearing a hat. Yes, there's lots of fashion shows, lots of galas, media events. So yes, I'm running around doing something.
These hats would vary from season to season.
Yes, yeah, it all depends on the material. When it's spring and summer, and it does get very hot here in Kentucky, I'm certainly working with more straws and lighter weight materials, opposed to the winter time or the fall, where I'm working with more wools or felts. Yeah.
And right now we are kind of like in between. We are getting closer to spring. What would you wear?
Honestly, whatever the day is. If it's cold outside, then I'm wearing a felt hat like today. If it's sunny and cold, I might wear, something like this, where it's a close or tight woven straw, but has a brim to it to cover from the sun. And then, something like this, definitely more warmer weather, spring, summer.
Do you take international commissions?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and I work with customers from all over the world, and so you don't have to be here and see me locally to have a custom piece made. I can communicate via Skype like this, Zoom, over email, the phone. So yeah, so I certainly, there are, majority of my customers probably are out of state. I've created a process to make it easy for everybody, where we can communicate our vision back and forth and create a hat just for you. I love millinery. I take great pride in keeping the traditional techniques alive. You know, I make everything from scratch, which is hard to find here in the United States especially. So if you're someone who has a difficult time finding a hat that properly fits you, your head's too small, too large, or you're wanting a particular shape or color but made in a particular material, whatever it may be, I'm your gal. So everything I do is one of a kind, with the exception of some of the collaborations where I do limited collections. I love creating hats for people that, you know, make them feel good about themselves, you know, brings out that confidence inside them. You know, because typically if someone's getting a custom piece, they're wearing it for a particular occasion, some kind of memento of some type of event or journey in their life. You know, but I create these hats to really become an heirloom that they can pass down to other generations to enjoy for years to come. I have a hat shop here in Louisville, Kentucky, so if you're around, please stop by, or you can visit me on my website and go from there.